So this work is based on and actually takes form through this practice, or that I sometimes almost call a method, but maybe I don't think of it really as a method, because a method is maybe something that aims at something specific. Mm-hmm. I don't know how you feel, but in this practice, it is really about the process, and the process is the work. But sometimes I use the word method to make it a little bit more easy to talk about. And I call it at this point a reformulation of free association for the poetic body. So a short name for this practice. And Leila Klockars is a psychoanalyst, and she has described free association as a form of remembering and a creative activity, and actually synthesis of both. Mm-hmm. And for me this has been somehow helpful to think about, and I think about a form of remembering of the poetic body, the body's remembering, and the creative body. So thinking like that she describes it, but for the body. And I started developing this practice first on my own, and it was like some kind of continuation from my own psychoanalysis. That process, it had already finished, and then I realized that I somehow need to, I want to give this space, or ask my poetic and my performing body in a kind of way where I could open for this kind of a stream of consciousness of the body. And I started developing on my own. Then I started sharing with a couple of colleagues, and then with some students, and then I met a Human Ensemble, the group, when I had a workshop and shared it with you. And then that is the beginning of a Human Ensemble, that journey. And this practice that I am engaging in is, for me, I've been thinking that what is like there in the core of it. It's really a journey of keep asking the body, keep coming back to asking the body, and on this beyond reason, asking the body beyond reason. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah. Yes, I invited you to join the Pixelache Festival when we had basically just started the whole Human Ensemble process, and I felt that it somehow resonated quite nicely with the theme of the festival. And I can remind briefly the 2020 and 2021 Pixelache Festival's theme is around the notion of developing resilience. What do we need to survive the psychological, social, environmental collapse that is going on around, through various art and experimental art projects. Then it brings us to the idea a little bit of sustainability, and this is something that I felt also resonate with your practices, is how do we go on, basically, so not to burn out. So if there's something you want to tell a little bit about that, how does it echo with your practice, and with what you've noticed throughout the work with the Human Ensemble?
I have learned through working with others, with my students and my colleagues, you all, that it has become for me this kind of artistic practice like some kind of red thread that runs through my work as a dancer, as a choreographer, as a pedagogue, when I am dialoguing. So for me personally, it has become something very sustainable in that sense, thinking about this life where as a freelancer you have usually very many different projects. They are now going on, then they end, then comes the next one, and they can be very different. It has felt and more feels very important to me to have some kind of a red thread, something that I bring with me through all these projects and in my dialogue. It's like some kind of core that I have there. I guess I look for a place for myself and for other bodies and for performers, dancers, to be in a place where you can notice inside, outside, and it's okay, and it's already happening, and without trying to force yourself, still. I think it's opening and being with what's there, and that doesn't mean that it becomes somehow, how would I say, not shareable or not articulated to an audience, because I have been working with this from the beginning with the thought of having an audience there, that I am inviting this to be shared with someone. So it's also about being finding a clarity in all that I notice and being okay enough with it so I can invite someone to also see that happening in front of them, and be on that journey as an audience, also in your own body. Allow that journey to go on inside you when you're looking.
Relates to the actual source, like we were discussing earlier, like the source of all this material that comes out, that in some ways it feels as if there's no need to produce, and there's no need to construct anything, because the material is already there, and so it almost becomes a self-sustainable, self-growing engine, sort of fuel that is there. And I think especially for maybe some of you are listening to us now might not be a dance audience, I think that's a very different and very interesting way to dance and to experience dance also.
We were associating from burn, and then we had burn out, and then burn, and then we had burn on.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't know who it was, but maybe you or some performer were talking about some kind of motor, that it seems like there's a motor going on there when you're in the practice. And I've been thinking about this. It relates also so much to what we were just saying, and there was something that you were saying about the source and where the movement is rising from. I think I've been thinking now recently that I would like in this practice to somehow be close to desire and be close to some kind of life force. But it has to do with also staying alive, and that is there already from the beginning, from birth, there in us. And this practice developed from this desire to move from there, and I also think that way, that allowing myself to be close and inviting people who I work with to be close to that desire. That does not take one specific form, but opens a spectrum of energies and movement and motion. It feels like I'm interested in the whole, like the whole person dancing, the whole human being dancing, and then that again comes back to that it's not really about then. Like the movement as such is the source of the movement, like how, from where and how the movement rises, and how in what kind of relationship we are to our movements and our bodies and each other.
Yeah, this burning on, I feel it still connects so clearly, but I was thinking for what you just said about the source, that I think there is something also inherent in this work that makes it possible to sustain myself in it for a long time, which I feel I experience this multiplicity of motors, or of potential threats that I can get like this, sparks from. And that's maybe the burn on, that I also, maybe that's the thing where I don't I don't need to burn also that one motor out, because I have the feeling there is I'm really existing inside. I mean, as my body is multiple and the informations in the space are so multiple, and I just open to be fed or be fueled and fuel back, probably. Like somehow there is this it's really like a whole web, and I feel that web is therefore it's almost like this sparks swimming through this matrix that I can catch a ride on various channels for a while, and I can constantly being reignited through a different channel, which doesn't mean like I'm just jumping around, but I somehow feel like and they are not separate. They are already they already coexist so clearly. I mean, this is no new thinking, but it really sits so in the experience of the practice. I feel that it's like I can take rides with a certain whoop, like ignition line or channel or pathway, and I notice in that already that there are so many connections inside of it, and I guess that's how it feeds itself constantly, and finds also its way of regenerating itself somehow, and that's really that goes a little bit about both the being burned on and staying in the stream, and what it's not one stream, it's like kind of a whole web in a way.
With this practice, what I feel is both as an open practice and in the setting of the work, once it's in a choreographed structure, is that what we've mentioned here, this existing rather than producing. What other words did we have? Self-generating sort of engine, motor. So all these things, I think what I find so interesting here is that they are valid both on a micro level, so for each and one of us individually within our own envelope. This is this sort of creature that keeps on going, and this practice allows this sort of regenerating energy and so on. But at the same time, there is a sort of macro, it echoes also with the collective situation, that when we are working all together in a collective situation, all this that we've mentioned also applies there. So it is like you say, there's a certain porosity. I find that by me having this existing regenerating situation and fuel, it actually feeds into the space, like you were saying, and then that feeds back into the individual. And so in terms of a collective way of coexisting, it's also very, very interesting. So that kind of leads us to a little bit our third point, which was coexistence, co-agency, and collective.
Burn with.
Exactly.
Yes. I think for me this was this moment when we had the workshop or the course that week in 2018, and then when you were engaging all through your psycho bodies in this practice, there it was like this ecosystem was born. And then I realized now, then working with you, especially with this piece, a human ensemble, and then with different groups, that what happens is I feel like if I, in my personal practice on my own, is somehow wanting to ask the body beyond reason and tempt this pre-verbal material to be forth articulated in my body, then when we are a collective and many of us are moving and practicing together in a space, then we are starting to tempting some kind of collective preconscious, some kind of, someone said, some kind of social memory, maybe like a, and then I don't mean memory by, I mean of course also memory that we know and that we can like explicit, but also memory that is in our bodies beyond our mind's reach in that sense. And that for me is it's super intriguing, and it's like a never-ending well. And then that goes back to the sustainability again. I mean, I think both the we will never get ready. We will never have like we will never have seen everything. It's like really it's such a wonderful source of wow. So yes, and that has so much to do with then, and that we work with now also here, is this really simultaneously noticing the outside landscapes and noticing the inside landscape, and being in this sensual contact with both. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you're also, of course, in the experience of it, so I don't want to ever kind of take it away from you. But like I also, in the coexistence, it's also really, I feel, if I now think very dance-wise, that how I guess all of us understood what it means to dance together or to dance a duet used to be, or very often is just based on certain conditions of a look-alike. And I think that's really freeing, that there is it somehow is based here on an understanding that it already happens, and that I don't need to change my body being in the potential that it now explores in order to engage and interact. And I feel that's again like on a social scale, or translating it as also a social practice is huge and so important, I feel, or to be explored.
In a way, this is also a practice of, in that poetic stream of the body that we are in, practicing not escaping from what is going on here in my body and around me, and somehow being with that. And of course then there are so many different parameters that we are practiced that are simultaneously there, and you're in the piece, and it's a lot of work. but something like this. And I also find it important, and thinking about dance, that a whole human being can be there on stage, and that we are not presenting only some kind of very narrow, very narrow little something, or only an ideal of what it is to be human. So, the body speaking.
Yes.
Yeah. And the body, like I like the notion of what you bring in about the soul. The soul existing through the body. So, I mean, I have no clue, but still, that's why I'm so curious about exploring this somewhere. And it sits there in the flesh to be perceived and explored. And,
curiosity came up. What a lovely word, curiosity.
Yeah, and
it's also
the interest, really deep interest,
and
curiosity. And someone, I don't know who said this, but someone said body is the form of the soul, and maybe form can sound like something stuck, but or static, but I don't think that was the meaning. For me, it's something beautiful in that links to what you were saying, that our souls take form and formulations. Here in this space.